Everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have joining me Sergey, the co-founder of Axelar. Sergey and I have been chatting quite a bit, and Sergey is very deep in AI and a prolific kind of student of the industry. And so we thought it would be fun to get on quite a few guests, interview them around the intersection of AI and crypto, and kind of just chat with people to see what their thoughts are on the market and what is real and what is not real. So really excited to have you, Sergey. Looking forward to this series that we're going to do, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Logan. I'm pretty excited. I think we're seeing a lot of different takes on AI in the blockchain field, different problems being solved. Some of them are relevant, some of them are for the sake of meme coins and things like that. So I'm looking forward trying to distill some hype from reality, understand the technology behind the scenes, and really understand how the two fields intersect at this point, which I think is a very critical intersection.
Maybe for like people that are less familiar with your background, can you do a quick intro, because you're much more like in the weeds than I would say most people understand.
Yeah, my background, more broadly, distributed systems, computer science, cryptography, and related things. I did PhD at MIT. I did it in cryptography. Before that, I studied a lot of networking. I did some early works behind software-defined networking when, that was a thing. I was a faculty at the University of Waterloo for a while, running a research group, and we were looking at various topics, everything from trusted execution environments, to distributed compute, databases, machine learning, and so on and so forth. And then, I helped to build out Algorand after that. So I was on the early founding team, and helped to take that blockchain to the market. And then last, few years, been spending on the problem of interoperability in the space, so connecting different blockchain ecosystems. And the questions of AI, artificial intelligence, kind of been coming in and out throughout my studies and throughout my profession. A lot of them came in the forms of, could you guarantee privacy around AI functions? Could you guarantee verifiability of information? Where does information come from? How do you ensure provenance of information? And so I've been looking at these things, making sure that AI can really be trustworthy, right? And I think this is a critical piece to establish.
Well, since we're a crypto podcast, before jumping into like general crypto markets, I would love to kind of maybe get your takes for the last 6 to 8 months on really the hot topics within crypto/AI. For a while, it seemed like the AI agents, you were bozo if you missed them. And now it seems like they've kind of cooled off, and people are trying to discern what is hype from reality. Any thoughts on kind of the AI agents and what was happening over the last 6 to 12 months?
So I think there's actually a need to separate of what happens in the sort of crypto public markets, right? And what's, hype at any given month versus the technology and what's been built, on the back end, what I think has a long-term, impact and effect. And I'm curious what you see, on the investment side, but I think even the agents, while I think, in my view, they have cooled off in the public perception, and especially, in the crypto field, it almost felt like crypto was looking for a new narrative, right, at the time, like 6 months ago, right? And then intersection of AI is, it's great. There are real problems, but, I think you have to understand what they are and how they affect things in the long term. And then I recently tweeted that everybody that had the money, pivoted to do agents, right?
Yeah.
And it was really like that. And I think it's very, very much, I would say short-term, effects of that we're seeing now evaporate.
I thought they were much better meme coins, because if I wanted to launch Logan coin, I would have to tweet about it quite a bit and get the community rallied. But if I can use a LLM wrapper and create a token for that tweets nonstop, it's a much better agent than me going out and doing the work for the coin. So we
And it
personally
has no
never,
feelings, no, it doesn't need to be shy, right? Like, it
yeah,
really knows who you are.
it
Post
doesn't need to
whatever.
hold back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, obviously we talk with a lot of other venture funds and hedge funds, and I think for me, the reason why we wanted to get into the crypto markets was kind of two things. One was to bring forth scale to the industry because uh, historically the industry was limited to, say, like 15 transactions or 10 transactions per second. And then second, use the technology at scale to enable better products. And specifically within kind of the crypto AI like intersection, obviously everybody is very excited about what happened with OpenAI and kind of some of the breakthroughs with transformers. But it seems like people are trying to shoehorn a lot of like these things together with crypto to kind of make that hype a little bit more exciting, so to speak. And I think the thing that we've kind of narrowed down is to build better products is how do you really tap into like increasing the compute capacity or tapping into like idle compute, trying to make that potentially more efficient over time. And then is there any novel like ways of like incentivizing people to do data collection, to train better models, or for people to kind of give you data that historically they wouldn't have? Because otherwise, like I have a hard time seeing, like specifically on like the model or AI front, really it's just like in my eyes kind of like two main ingredients outside of like just like the raw software engineering and like very exceptional engineers building it. It's like how much compute do you have with like GPUs, and then like how much data or what data are you actually training this on? And it seems like if you can either optimize one or both of those, then you could potentially make better products.
Yeah, I'm interested to dive deeper on this. My personal view is that the data piece is incredibly interesting, right? Because I think it is at the end of the day about data, how it all composes together, how you extract extra, insights from maybe private data that you don't want to have to share with everybody. On the compute side, frankly, I'm more skeptical, right? And I think I've seen a lot of work trying to build, distributed systems over, compute, over the networks, over the public internet. Training and models is very data hungry. It's very, compute intensive, but it's also bandwidth intensive that, often comes as an issue. So, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I haven't seen anything generic enough that I think I would say that could scale for every use case. Maybe for some specific use cases, we see some setups that could work, but I'm really interested to dive deeper in that.
Yeah, I mean, today the primary narrative or kind of like thought process was, okay, maybe it's more possible to tap into inference requests, push the model to the edge. I think everybody would love to run these models locally on their phone or their home computer if possible, so you don't have to kind of introduce any latency at all. And maybe that's the end state. We saw DeepSeek. You could really compress models, use less compute, which is pretty cool. But then on the training side, to your point, it was very bandwidth intensive, and kind of like with blockchains, similarly, we saw kind of like the progression from like kilobytes, megabytes, and hopefully gigabytes in the future, like these models. And if you're to do distributed training, it would be like many gigabytes, is my thought. There's a couple teams now in the market that actually I would love to chat with you about and have them, all of us on the podcast together. One of them is Noose. They've claimed they figured out kind of decentralized training and kind of limiting that bandwidth overhead. And I believe there's one more that just kind of raised early seed round. But yeah, it'd be fun to chat with these teams, have them push back from our understanding and see any flaws in our logic.
No, that sounds super exciting. I mean, in my head, I think the two assumptions that I think we'll have to get through is like just the quadratic overhead of a lot of the algorithms, right? So you really, if you want anything better than that, like you have to think of how to, minimize either the constants within that quadratic overhead or just eliminate it altogether. And then I think the second one, which I think is very important, is how does it translate to the user utility and cost at the end of the day, right? So assuming you make better algorithm, assume there's even less traffic. At the end of the day, the decentralized systems will have to charge you more, right? In one way, shape, or another, right? And like somebody will have to pay more for it. So the product market fit between the user demand and capabilities will have to still be found, in my view.
We know crypto just loves making things extremely technical without any product use cases. So to your point, even if we can do it, it has to be a better product, and people have to desire that product or have a need for it. So no, I think it will be a really fun conversation. And again, I'm really looking forward to the series because I can't really think of anybody else better than you to kind of deep dive this intersection with. Maybe if we shift though, obviously crypto markets really in the first half of 2024 were on fire. We kind of had a run up into 2023. Sometimes the crypto public markets are not always reflective of kind of the progress that has been made either by engineering teams or also just like behind the scenes in the private markets on the venture side. We've obviously had this massive kind of upswing throughout 2024. We've had increased kind of regulatory clarity with the Trump administration, but now the markets are kind of nuking, so to speak. How are you kind of feeling over the last like 12 to 18 months? What have you kind of seen within the industry?
So I think 12 months ago, I think I would classify it as a lot of sort of exhaustion and looking for a new narrative, right? And I think that's why some of the AI narratives started to pick up on and they're easy to execute on, right? And so we've seen an array of that. I think with Trump administration coming in with new regulatory clarity, a new wave of optimism came in, right? Everybody was pretty excited. Everybody started to make trips down to Washington, right? So
you were there there recently as well, weren't you?
Yeah, I was there a couple of times. We got an opportunity to meet with some of the senators, participate in the crypto ball. So it's very interesting to see, right? Like sort of the place where everybody, tried to avoid in some sense for a while. Now everybody is rushing back into. But it did give some optimism, right? But I think the optimism needs to be cautioned a little bit, right? And in particular, like a lot of the policy work that I think we're seeing being done on the stablecoin and the market structure bill, they're very good. They're very positive. They will allow us to classify these assets, but they don't really talk too much about decentralization of things, right? They don't really talk about where these assets can and cannot be issued. And I'd like to be corrected here, but it almost feels like you could apply those bills to Oracle database and call it a day.
Yeah.
Right. So I do think there's more work to be done to understand, like, how do we really bring the benefits of decentralized systems, the unlimited composability, the unlimited distribution, so that we don't end up just, recreating new names of financial assets, in a traditional databases, right? And then, I think, last month it's been more of a, what the heck is going on in the market? Yeah. every week you wake up and it's something new, and like very, very reaction, very distracting, I think, for a lot of builders. Frankly, I think everybody's trying to figure out how to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, it's always kind of nice when, from a pure engineering product standpoint of when prices are down, maybe you don't have to kind of be so whimsical with the market and can focus only on engineering, and the timeline always gets a little bit more quiet, and so less distraction, so to speak. But yeah, it has been fairly interesting. I think what I've appreciated from the Trump administration thus far is just that they want the crypto industry to grow. They want the United States to kind of lead in that arena. And so there are some positive fronts. Maybe we got over our skis a little bit, but it seems like to me, at least now, especially with some of these high throughput blockchains, Trump launching his meme coin on Solana, that did $33 billion in trading volume in one day. Historically,
that was a good move. Like
launching the meme coin?
Yeah.
It's very interesting just because, like, to me, what it signals to anybody else is that like, hey, free game. If the president can launch a meme coin, so can you. And I don't know, like, what we've seen with meme coins is it's kind of been an insider game. If you can get access to the contract, if you can get certain people chatting about it, then the meme goes well. But it really seems like, I don't know. To me, the thing that I was excited about was just purely like the volumes. Because the thing that I've been thinking about from these blockchain systems is just like, how much trading volumes can you get on chain? To your point, Sergey, if we're kind of just recreating like TradFi or an Oracle database, that doesn't get me super excited. The thing that gets me excited is around the lines of, hey, can we tap in or create like one unified financial system around the world and kind of have like a single standard, so to speak, that will help unify them. The thing that got me into crypto was really the Ethereum vision of banking the unbanked for a variety of reasons that didn't ultimately plan out. But I think now with kind of the more high performance infrastructure, it's directionally possible. And so it was interesting to see that. I mean, I think the NASDAQ does like 250 to 300 million of volume or $1 billion of volume a day. And so if we're like 10% of that, I think that's a unique stat. But purely from a market standpoint, I don't know. It's sends confusing signals to the market.
Yeah. And I'm curious, from your view, have you seen, so you run a fund, have you seen kind of an interest in crypto from outside these days, right? Is there a new capital that's been
from
flowing?
Limited partners?
Limited partner. Just in general, like how do you see, people reacting to some of the administration changes?
2017, people from like the institutional side, it was too early. And so it was like, all right, if you had like a small fund and high net worth individuals, you could potentially have a fairly high returning fund. I think 2021, there was pretty massive gains as well there. I think now what we're hearing from limited partners is that a lot of funds have high kind of TVPI. So potentially kind of like high bookmarks, but they haven't actually returned that capital to limited partners. So within kind of the fund landscape right now, there's this big like chat about, all right, should there be more hedge funds focus on purely liquid markets versus venture funds? Are there too many venture funds? And to me, I mean, more capital is obviously great. Crypto is really dominated by flows, but I think the return dispersion has really, this cycle or last, call it 18 months, has really been to very few. You really had to be in the correct assets. And if you were not in the correct assets, you kind of vastly underperformed. And so I think, in my opinion, the market is just getting more quote unquote sophisticated in terms of you need to be opinionated, which I think is honestly healthy for the market. Mm-hmm. And so there is some LP appetite. I think with the Bybit hack, some LPs kind of got spooked from the institutional standpoint. They're like, all right, if this can happen to Bybit, like, what happens to my funds? Or are we funding North Korea? Just a lot of kind of like open questions. But I think I am still very optimistic about the future. I think that increased regulatory clarity from like the BlackRocks, the Fidelities, Franklin Templetons, the very large asset managers can actually start moving into space with that clarity. But for like the high net worth individuals, I think kind of recent market activity and less kind of realized EPI has kind of slowed some of those LPs funding down.
Yeah. Curious in your view, right? Like as BlackRocks of the world move into the space, in some senses becomes, less maybe decentralized, right? Like more concentrated. The use cases become more maybe professionalized. Now we're talking about stable coins, payments, RWAs, right? How do you see the segment between sort of open raw innovation in the crypto, which is what we've historically seen over the last 10 years, versus this institutional, and like how do these coexist with one another?
I think the last like, I don't know, decade for crypto markets has historically just been dominated by infrastructure. Because the infrastructure was not there, we needed things like Axelar, we needed high throughput blockchains, we needed the performance to ultimately allow product engineers to build applications. And I think the market has now gotten to a point to where I wouldn't say we're like anywhere near done, but there's sufficient high performance infrastructure that allows developers to be more expressive in the types of applications that they can ultimately build. The more kind of throughput, so to speak, that you have, the more or larger sandbox that engineers kind of have to play in to build more unique applications. And I think that's broadly continuing to expand over time. So to me, it's less of like the framing of like kind of like free markets versus institutions, and more of, hey, it took much longer than probably we all thought to get to the point where infrastructure's at a fairly good spot. We kind of explored the entire design space under the sun for different scaling solutions, sharding, L2s, app chains, modular, integrated, low throughput, high throughput, very centralized, very decentralized. And I think that was fine. I think those experiments were worth running. At Frictionless, I mean, obviously we're very opinionated kind of on the high throughput blockchains, but I think now it's more of a shift to moving up the stack to, all right, build some applications, have them actually be better products, and don't just slap a token on them. And can you actually go out and sell those, both build the product and sell those and actually generate revenues? And because I think the liquid funds and the conversations around the liquid markets is saying, hey, you have a really high FDV, or you have like token unlocks. How are you justifying your valuation? Because we all know crypto has very high highs and low lows. And if liquid markets are going to be more focused on valuations, they want to see a path for you either to grow into that valuation or to be able to justify owning that token. And so to me, it's now less about the infrastructure stack, more about profitability, and let's build really useful applications. And I honestly think, going back to your early question on like the limited partners and institutional interests, that will spur the interest as well. The reason why stablecoins are so quote unquote exciting is because they make so much money. Tether has been absolutely insane how much revenue they've made from just owning Tether and T-bills.
Yep, no, that makes sense. Do you think projects will take longer to, launch their coin going forward?
I think crypto, both investors and engineers perhaps thought of crypto as the place to kind of like get rich quick, so to speak. And you can launch a token. I think now the market, as with like traditional venture or startups, it just takes a while, as you know, and as a founder, to actually build a product and then to go to the market, get the distributions, do the BD. It takes time. And so I think, to me, what there's going to need to be is just like, all right, we're focused on applications, we're focused on building, but everybody in this entire stack has to be aligned with, hey, the turnaround for these things is not going to just be slap a token on, like, let's get some marketing and go out there. It's let's build the product, let's get some revenues. If the token makes sense, let's do the token. If not, like, are we doing an IPO or what's the plan here? But I think it's more, in my mind, just focusing on actual products and playing the long-term games instead of the short-term games. Because otherwise, I just think like we'll continue kind of in this circular stuff that we're doing today. And I think it frustrates everybody.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you see the world where effectively a token and the way it's sort of price that the markets kind of represents by the fundamentals of the network, like, the revenue and the multiple on top of it, like you have in the IPO market. It has its own like markups, or, do you still see, I guess, like back to the Trump point, right? You can always say, this is not a,
Yeah, it's a
this is just a meme coin,
community coin, or
community coin. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it will be some combination. I mean, even for like layer ones or Bitcoin, like I think Bitcoin has kind of found its footing-ish now in
Yep.
like the global markets as just like the digital gold equivalent. I think for like layer ones or smart contract layer ones, like the market is still trying to figure out that more broadly. We have some ideas, but I think it will be some combination of potentially the moneyness, so to speak. Over the long term, I think will trends more towards like revenues, which is why, I mean, I think internally we've been focused a lot on like on-chain trading volumes, at least for the layer one assets, because MEV has been the primary way, at least thus far, of showing like any possibility to justify these valuations over the long term, by capturing some of that MEV and redistributing it back to stakeholders or stakers within the network, generating kind of real yield instead of just inflationary yield. And so what I'm excited about is, I mean, the IPO market more broadly has still been fairly slow. You need to make, I believe, 100 million in revenue just to have the possibility
500 plus.
Yeah,
that's the latest number here.
Yeah, to like actually do an IPO. And I think one of the things that really saddens me the most was really around kind of like accredited investors being able to invest in startup. And I mean, these startups are going later and later, and fewer actually doing IPOs. And I think there's a lot of kind of disillusionment in the United States, and even more broadly, is because you have some people having access or the opportunity to invest in an asset class that is generally growing, and a lot of people that just don't because of regulatory reasons. And I think if the great kind of American dream, so to speak, in my mind, was being able to kind of take risk for the better and worse. And I think what I would be really excited about is kind of bringing a lot of those capital markets onto blockchain rails, not only for United States citizens, but globally. And if you build a company and you want to do an on-chain IPO, whether that's 5 million or 10 million, and kind of share in that upside and downside of whatever you're building, I think that would be great. Obviously, we need to figure out the exact mechanics of that, but directionally, that is something that really gets me excited on the global front to build kind of wealth and prosperity for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm super excited. In my view, like the IPOs or SPAC coin offerings will hopefully converge into unified framework, right?
Yes.
I think in some sense, like SPACs was a way to avoid long lineups for IPO market, right?
Yeah. So a lot of interesting things came from that. I mean, and I think like you push it to extremes, you get like the meme coins, and so it will be interesting to see where the market kind of nets out here, and like, all right, are we going to go full spectrum, which we have, or are we going to try to find some middle ground, or maybe we just like, these things are collectibles over here, these are trying to be real businesses, like they both have risks, but one is trying to actually produce money and one is just a meme. So we'll see where the market nets out. But yeah, I think obviously the volatility sucks. If you've been in crypto long enough, you kind of become numb to the volatility a little bit. But I am very excited about the future. I think there's a lot of now applications that are actually getting built. It will take some time for them to build their sales pipelines, continue on the BD front and get revenue. But to me, it's a very high probability that you have quite a few successful applications actually really break out, and then people will be able to point to things out in the crypto market outside of stable coins.
What give it like one example of application you're excited about now?
So internally, again, we're focused on two big things, which is on-chain trading volumes, because I think that's these blockchains are really good for like moving asset A to B. And so we track trading volumes quite a bit. I think, in my opinion, it's probably going to be a race between these high throughput blockchains to what we call like build the global trading engine. You can kind of think of all the trading venues around the world as their own databases, and whether it's like a Solana or an Aptos of the world, they kind of create a shared standard that you opt into when you use that network. And so we think on that side, they're going to be racing towards building this trading engine. On the flip side, what we get excited about from the more like on-chain application side is really around these deepened networks. I kind of joke that they're both bullish and bearish because they are trying to build actual businesses. And so it does take longer to actually build a business and produce revenues. But the bullish thing is they're actually trying to produce revenues. And so to me, it's kind of like the crypto native way to do payments, to coordinate people. To me, that's a very exciting field. There, as with any crypto projects or venture capital or startup space, there's a lot of things that you want to avoid, but there's quite a few diamonds in the rough, and I think those projects are actually starting to produce revenues, which is exciting.
Makes sense. Awesome.
Cool. Well, maybe we can kind of wrap it there. Any other thoughts on the market or any updates? How are things going at Axelar?
I think they're pretty good. Yeah, I think we're been building for the last few years. And now we at a point where all these new assets that are coming on chain, right, from stablecoins to RWAs, frankly, like, they are tired of choosing where to launch. So they want to go everywhere and launch on every chain. So we'll find ourselves, in a lot of early conversations with stablecoin issuers, asset managers. So we've done some work with JP Morgan, Apollo, Citigroup. All of them are looking at tokenization vertical and, how can they leverage. A lot of them also have, frankly, private chains that they want to connect to public environments and be able to, settle across them. So we providing a lot of work and support there. So yeah, a lot of fragmentation still in the market. I think that will continue for a while, and we'll find ourselves being pulled in many good directions in the process.
Yeah, awesome. Well, awesome update. Cool. Well, we're really looking forward to this series again, Sergey. I think we'll get to the bottom of what is truth and what is kind of fugazi within the crypto and AI markets. So to all the listeners, keep an eye out on those upcoming episodes. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Sergey.
Thanks, Logan.